Yep, Kelsey grabbed a huge steal there. That was a huge steal. Over to Aaliyah, over to Lexie, way downtown. Boom. Caitlin Clark jumped out her seat so many times she could have hit 8 to 10 jump shots tonight. First Indiana Fever win in 9 years and 1 day. September 17, 2016 was the last time. You could tell the fire around that crowd. It was too much for Atlanta. Atlanta could not handle it.
9 years. That's how long the Indiana Fever waited for this moment. And when it finally came, it didn't just feel like a win. It felt like the rebirth of a franchise. But here's the thing. The Fever didn't dominate from start to finish. No, the game turned on one explosive quarter, one play that flipped the crowd from hopeful to unstoppable.
Shout out to the Gainbridge Fieldhouse crowd. That Indiana Fever crowd, you guys blew the dream out tonight. Offenses for both teams was hot garbage in the first half of the game. The Indiana Fever are going to win tonight. I had a feeling about it. I had a good feeling about it.
What sparked that shift? And which player's unexpected burst sealed Atlanta's fate? Stick around because this game may have just changed everything for the Fever's future. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video.
Kelsey Mitchell tonight, 19 points, 4 assists, 2 steals, 4 3-pointers tonight. Hey, was there any shot in hell if they make the semis that Caitlin Clark comes back? I think it's still a no. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to see it. And it was really that third quarter is where they did the damage, 24 points.
The Fever weren't supposed to pull away. Everything about how the first half played out screamed closer game, maybe even another brutal collapse. But something flipped the moment the third quarter started to roll, and if you watched it live, you could feel it building. Both teams had been stuck in quicksand through the opening half. Indiana's offense looked like it was pulling teeth just to string together a clean possession, and Atlanta wasn't much better. Missed layups, clanked jumpers, sloppy turnovers. It was the kind of stretch where neither side looked ready to seize a playoff moment. That only made the tension worse for Fever fans, because all they had carried into this series were memories of heartbreak. 9 years since the last postseason win, and with every empty possession, you could almost hear the anxious shift in the crowd. They've seen this story before.
Tasha Howard actually showed up a little bit tonight, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and I think it felt like the dagger 3, 7 points, 5 rebounds. Aaliyah Boston, pretty good game. There's times I wish he would be more aggressive and flat meaner.
So was this going to break the same way again? And then something happened. The offense was sputtering, looking like another empty trip, until Lexie Hull suddenly found herself with space near the arc. Not a clean, scripted look, but just enough daylight. Without hesitation, she squared up and let it fly. Net. The shot didn't just count for 3 points. It sounded like someone pulled the lid off the basket and pulled the plug off the arena nerves all at once. The place went from restless to electric.
It was 56-44 with 0.5 left in the third after that 3. Yep, Kelsey grabbed a huge steal there. That was a huge steal. Over to Aaliyah, over to Lexie, way downtown. Boom. And that 3 really, really got the crowd all lathered up real nicely.
It was one of those plays that isn't technically a game winner, but feels like it rewrites the whole script in real time. You could see it even in the Fever huddle. Nobody was hanging their heads anymore. They were barking, clapping, feeding into the noise of the crowd as if a weight lifted all at once. That's the thing about playoff basketball. It isn't just about numbers on the scoreboard. It's about those moments that shift energy. Hull's 3 did exactly that. It wasn't just about the points. It was about timing. The offense had been on life support, and one shot gave them oxygen. Suddenly, the Fever weren't grinding through possessions. They were attacking. Atlanta, on the other hand, got caught off balance. What was once a dead-even fight turned into a scramble for the dream just to keep control. And right when you thought maybe they could gather themselves, a new wave came off the bench. Michaela Timson checked in, and if you blinked, you might have missed how fast she made her presence felt.
9 minutes, and she scored 9 points. Stephanie White has got to start letting her show up. Makayla Timpson actually got some playing time in this game. She's the most athletic player we have on this team.
She wasn't easing into the game. She came swinging with pure energy. In just 9 minutes, she dropped 9 points, and it wasn't quiet. Easy baskets either. She finished plays through contact, battled for offensive boards, and then hit a massive and one that sent the bench into a frenzy. The camera panned to teammates jumping up, waving towels and screaming, while the crowd reacted like they had just watched a game-winning dunk. For a rookie in her playoff debut, it was the definition of fearless. And more than that, it flipped momentum entirely. Fans watching knew what that meant. One rookie, one role player, stepping into the spotlight when stakes were high. That's not just production, that's a signal to everyone around her. It told the veterans, the stars, even the coaching staff, that this wasn't going to be a repeat of seasons past. It was a moment that said, somebody's ready to swing the tide, so let's all follow. And from there, Atlanta was the team scrambling for answers.
And they hit some later in the game, and it didn't matter. The game was well out of reach at that point. But at one point, I know they were 1 for 10 from three-point range. You got to think they're not going to shoot that poorly in the next game.
When the scoreboard read 56-44, with a half-second left in the third, it looked like just another number in a long game log. But context made it huge. That separation, that double-digit lead at the end of a quarter, was more than comfortable padding. It was the stamp of resurrection for Indiana. A team buried by almost a decade of playoff silence finally shouted back, and they did it behind a bench spark and a shooter who refused to hesitate. That swing wasn't built on highlight reel names or established stars. It was built on gutsy shooting and relentless hustle. By the time the team sat down heading into the fourth, it didn't feel like a question anymore. The fever had shifted from doubt to inevitability, from trying not to lose to expecting to win. That third quarter became their trial, their test, and their breakout rolled into a single stretch of minutes. And none of it was about one big superstar. It was about the players who slipped into the spotlight at the right time, feeding off a crowd that demanded something new after 9 years of waiting. That's how belief is born. Sometimes it starts with a single three-pointer, followed by the roar of a rookie who's too young to know the script of failure. And when that combo lit up the floor, Indiana rediscovered exactly what had been missing all this time. This win was more than a box score. It was proof the fever could rise again, carried by a fired-up crowd that refused to sit quiet and role players who delivered when the spotlight hit them. That's how you know a team is turning the corner. Not just stars, but everyone ready to contribute. And here's the real question. If Indiana keeps playing with this kind of edge, does that suddenly make them the playoff sleeper nobody planned for? After 9 long years, the Fever finally drew a line in the sand. Enough waiting. It's time to play like contenders again.